Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. We've got a special March Madness episode here. We are going to be talking BYU's draw and their path to the Final Four, as well as just our overall thoughts on the bracket, any tidbits we picked up, and just kind of breaking it all down and what we like, what we don't like, and what we expect to see. And obviously, a lot of advice on how to fill out your bracket that you should absolutely ignore. So we are going to jump into it. But before we do, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us as we continue to try to grow and reach more and more people and really grow the conversation. So, Adam, last night was the selection Sunday, and BYU, we finally figured out where they're going to be. We got the whole bracket in front of us. And now there's nothing left to do but to kind of wait and see. And we got at least one more game of the season, one more game of AJ DeBonsa. How you feeling?
I'm happy with the seed. I know we debated at length prior to the Big 12 tournament where they were going to land and what they needed to do to improve their seed. I thought BYU did enough to get to the sixth seed. I didn't think that the committee would grant them the sixth seed. It feels like there's always that reason to not give BYU their deserved seed. They'll come up with something, or the Sunday play and they had to play in a different spot, whatever it is. So I was thrilled that we got the sixth seed. I think that's a good spot for us. I think I like the draw. We'll get into the draw a little bit later, but I'm feeling good about it. I like where we're at, and again, it's AJ's run in the tournament. The guy's been clutch. Let's hope the team can rally around and continue the momentum built in the Big 12 tournament. But you got to feel good after the way they played against Houston. I know you want the win there. The guys were obviously gassed. We can talk through that game if we want, and kind of the meltdown in the last 7 minutes offensively, but overall, man, I like where the team's at. I think given the injuries and all the adversity they faced, they're in about as good a position as you could ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's where I go back and forth as I look at it, and I think, it is about as good as you could ask for in many ways, but it's still a tough path. But I mean, really, it's going to be a tough path anywhere. I mean, at this point in the game, like it's March Madness. It's always tough,
Yeah,
and even when it's not
find me
tough,
a sixth seed that's got an easy path to the Final Four.
right? Yeah, if you want an easier path, earn it in the regular season. Be a higher seed, right?
Exactly.
So I think sixth seed is where I think people hoped BYU would end up based on the resume, and they actually get it. Like you said, they didn't get hurt from it. Everyone says they're kind of slated in that last six seed spot, but to get the draw, I mean, we can go through even and compare what matchups the other six seeds have.
Yeah.
And, nobody has it that easy. And honestly, the rest of the way is better. And then you look at these fifth seeds too. Like a fifth seed doesn't have it much easier.
No.
And then a one seed at, worst case scenario, you're running into, unless there's like some upset, you're running into a really tough path there. And so even though you're a slightly higher seed, the path really isn't that much cleaner. And you have to face this one seed even sooner.
Especially on a year like this, the one seeds are distinctly difficult. I don't know that Michigan is really humming along like the other one seeds are. They seem to struggle a little bit in their tournament, didn't win the Big Ten championship. But typically, and especially in a year like this, the one seeds are tough. And so I would take a six seed over a 4 or a 5 any day. The 2 or the 3 is a great spot to be in because you don't want to run into those one seeds until you get into the Elite Eight. And you want them to have, an off chance that a one seed's going to get knocked off before they meet you in the Elite Eight. So I, I I don't like the 4 or 5 seed because you're running into the one seed so quick in the Sweet 16. I'd rather have the 6 or the 7 spot.
Yeah, the sixth seems to be all right. And actually, I like it better because you avoid that 2 seed as well for another round. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to get through these teams unless you're lucky and somebody knocks them off. I mean,
Right.
There's always that chance. And then you're playing maybe, a lesser team that's kind of gotten hot lately or whatever. Maybe they slow down or whether maybe they don't have the same level of athletes, but they win on matchups or tactics. I don't know. But
that's what makes March Madness so crazy. And that's usually what instigates a lot of Cinderella runs is you have some upsets ahead of them so they don't have to play these dominant teams that have an off night, and that's what makes it's what makes it so much fun. You come in and you're a team that won a conference championship of a a Power Four conference, and you're looking great, and then all of a sudden you have a bad night and you're out of the tournament. It shakes everything up, and so you hope that is going to be you, because inevitably, outside of the dominant teams in that season, those who make it to the Final Four get some help in front of them, and I think BYU is going to need a little bit of that this year, whether that's Purdue or Arizona. I don't know that BYU can get through both of them. It feels like BYU could get through Gonzaga. It's kind of like a home game for Gonzaga, so that's going to be tough. But anyway, we can look at the draw later. But inevitably, you're going to need some help. You're going to need some chaos in the bracket to make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, absolutely. So and that's always the case. I mean, unless you're again one of these top seeds, especially in a year like this where there is a clear distinction, like they're on a tier of their own this year, and I don't think there was much debate about who these one seeds were going to be.
Yeah.
Even had Houston beat Arizona, maybe they sneak in with some losses there to these other one seeds in their tournaments, but their conference tournaments. But I don't think so. I think it was pretty much set in stone. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. Actually, let's talk about their draw a little bit. And let me see. Yeah, I'll open up I need maybe a better view of this. Like pull up here ESPN's, but we can.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a bracket with us, Trevor.
Two regions.
Show us the wisdom.
We can get into it. I was up far too late last night, trying to do some research and things, and trying to see how my gut was feeling. But mostly, I was just feeling tired. So we'll see how it goes. The idea was, I'll come back and tweak it, but I never can. Like once I put it in, like that's kind of it. So,
locked.
I'll do some other ones that are more like what I want to see happen, and my perfect like scenario play out just for kicks. I also do some pulling off some of these other metrics out there and trying to say, okay, if these predictions or whatever were completely right, what would that look like? But that's more just for comparison. That's more just those aren't my picks. So we can get into our own picks, but let's look at this region right here. So BYU in the West. So first off, we talked about that. Like they are a 6 seed, or they're described as the last 6 seed, but they get in their preferred region. They're in Portland. They're out west. Should have a good, sizable Cougar crowd there for them, and not having to travel too far. And as we talked about, some of these matchups that they have to go through seem reasonable, especially compared to like you have Louisville going up against the South Florida. They seem like kind of a dark horse, kind of a sleeper, although not really, because then everyone starts picking them. You look at the other 6 seed, you got UNC going up against VCU. They're
VCU is pretty strong,
and they've had.
And we talked about this last week, but that's the 6 seed matchup you don't want, because VCU hasn't played a ton of top tier teams, so you don't have tape against them against really dominant teams. Nobody knows how good VCU is. In theory, VCU's made a run to the Final Four from the 11 seed before. That is a dangerous team. I do not want to play them in round 1. I like our draw against Texas or North Carolina State, because you got a lot of film on them playing top tier talent and how they fare against them and how they respond. So I don't like playing the 11 seed who comes out of the small conference and wins a conference championship and has been dominant against smaller schools all year.
Yeah, and that goes to our last 6 seed, which is Tennessee. You potentially face Miami of Ohio. Now, they fell flat in their conference tournament, but that's a team that knows how to win. And that is a skill. We talk about that football season all the time, like knowing how to win. That's a team that knows how to win. Granted, I've seen a lot of people that don't think they'll make it past SMU. And that kind of seems like a team we wouldn't necessarily want to go up against either.
That's what I mean. SMU falls into that bucket of one of those Power 4 teams who you got the tape on, but they were cruising in their conference tournament. I mean, I wouldn't take any of the other 6 seed draws over ours. I think they've all got their own challenges. You got to run through, a 3 seed in Illinois versus Gonzaga, 2 seed Houston versus Purdue. Who would you rather have? You can play that game, all day long, and still, while there's some nuance there, maybe I'd rather face Houston than Purdue. Purdue's pretty daunting, but I don't know. I like our first round opponent, and I like our second round opponent. I think that's the best you're going to get out of a 6 seed. After that, you're playing 2 seeds unless there's some chaos.
Right. And looking at the difference again, just going back to 5 seeds versus 6 seeds. So they win 64% of the time, which is not really that high considering
That's almost a coin flip. That's
right.
crazy.
Right. And then oops. Apparently I'm picking Miami of Ohio.
The
So
12-5
how do I
matchups, man.
why won't it give me the preview? Because I can't preview that one yet because it's not set. Yeah, and so let's see. This is 61%. So I mean, it's only slightly better. Both of them, like you said, just slightly better than a coin flip in either spot. But this way, we avoid the 1 seed. So okay,
Yeah.
so we feel good about the 6 seed. We feel good about our initial draw. Let's talk about those two teams. So because I have to say I feel a little bit concerned not knowing who the team is. So that means all the scouting is going into two different teams, and ultimately the team just needs to focus on what they're doing. But in terms of the coaching staff, getting film and prepping in that regard, game planning, they got to kind of hedge and game plan for both teams. But also it seems like there's an 11 seed that or a play-in team that plays in and then continues to make a run. So this makes me a little bit nervous. I hope we're not going up against one of those teams.
Yeah. The downside of the play-in is exactly what happened in the conference tournament, where I think it helped us have that first game and then play West Virginia, and then we came out competitive against Houston because you you played in the tournament, right? You got some of those jitters out and you made it past the preliminary round. So BYU is definitely at a disadvantage in that sense going into this game. That's the one thing I don't like about our draw, about our matchup is one, you want to know who you're playing, and two, you don't want them to come in with the advantage of having played a game and won a game. So they're going to come in with some confidence of saying, "Okay, we've won a tournament game," and that's tough. Kevin Young at the press conference talks about he's like, look, I'm always optimistic. I think there's some advantage to this where sometimes you overthink it when you got tons of tons of time to prep for the opponent, and we don't have that luxury. And it allows us to just focus on ourselves and get better on what we need to be better at. And so, I mean, of course, you want your coach looking at the positives there, but overall, I don't think anybody wants to play the teams from the first the play-in rounds.
So let's take a look at these two teams because I've gone back and forth on who I want to see win this. So I'm kind of curious who you think, because from what I've looked at is basically Texas is more reliant on their bigs. NC State maybe a little more guard play and a little bit more shooting. Other than that, they're pretty similar on a lot of these key metrics in terms of points scored, field goal percentage, like not a drastic difference. Free throw percentage, 3-pointer. This is actually, that's a little edge for NC State. And then, and again, if you look at their numbers that they have, not their ranking, because the ranking that's a vast difference. But 3-pointers made at a higher percentage, that could be a difference, and that's something obviously BYU struggled against. But on the other hand, BYU doesn't have a lot of bigs that are going to be able to defend the paint, and if that's the way that Texas wants to go. So I'm kind of torn about which team I'd rather see BYU see. Who are you rooting for to come out of this matchup?
Well, for the record, I expect NC State to win this. I think they just match up better against Texas. I know they lost their first go around, and that's to me all the more reason NC State's going to pull this off. But I would rather see Texas for a few reasons. Number one, I think we match up better against the teams that try and slow it down, but play poor defense. Texas plays atrocious defense. They're what 116th in defensive efficiency, something like that. They're not good on defense. And so I would much rather play the worst defensive team because of how BYU has played against those teams this season. And then I think we do better against those teams that play poor defense and yet are relying on their bigs, not on the 3-pointer. Because the 3-pointer, you can shoot yourself back into a game. You can shoot yourself to victory if you're on point from three. And I don't want to play that team. after Alabama last year and the struggles we've had against perimeter defense this year. I do not want to play that team that can just come in and we play better than them in every aspect of the game, but they shoot the lights out from behind the 3-point line and game over. They beat us by 10 points. So I don't want to play that team, and that's another reason I like our draw. That's not the teams we play in the first 3 rounds if we keep winning. And so, except for NC State. So I would like Texas to win this. The other reason I want them to win it is because they play a style that's similar to Gonzaga and Purdue. I'd much rather get into that mindset now and get our feet wet with a lesser version of Gonzaga against Texas, and then you level up and you play Gonzaga, and then you really level up and you play Purdue. But it's all that the bigs inside, a slower game, and now the defense gets a whole lot better when you get to Gonzaga and Purdue. But that's why I like Texas to start off with, is it gives us a taste of that, but somebody who does not play good defense, and I like how we match up against them.
Yeah, counterpoint. Even bad 3-pointing teams seem to find the stroke behind the arc when they play us. And so
That
Texas
is true.
also has bigs, and all of a sudden they become a 3-point team. That becomes dangerous. But I'm trying to look here. I also had, NC State is more block shots. They're better at block shots and causing turnovers. But what was it? Oh, it was rebounds. So the one thing is, Texas, I don't know why I didn't come up on this one, but averages total rebounds is 34.8 in their 51st, whereas NC State is 32.1. They're 179th in total rebounds. And that's one thing that I think BYU does really well when they're able to crash the boards, get the rebounds, and one, get offensive rebounds, but two, get rebounds and get off in fast on a fast break. And that's when they thrive, is like you said, getting that fast pace. So I guess if Texas, because their bigs are dominant and they're able to rebound, maybe that hurts BYU's ability to do that and really start getting in the flow. Because I think that seems to generate energy with the team and open up some play with them. And then it seems to usually start with some sort of great rebound or, a block or something that really gets the team going. And so if you're having a harder time rebounding, maybe that's not something that mucks it up for them. And so, again, I think I tend to agree with you in terms of rather go up against a bad defense, against teams that's not shooting from the outside as much and wants to slow it down, because especially if they do slow it down, I think AJ DeBonsa can hopefully, make something happen. Otherwise, we'll be able to push the pace and get into fast breaks where I think we thrive a little bit more. So I don't know. So you're rooting for Texas to win. You like that matchup better for BYU. Who do you think is coming out of it?
I think it's NC State. I do. I think they're the better team. I think they played a little bit better down the stretch. They lost just barely in the first matchup with Texas, and it's tough to win that close game twice against the same team. They're very similarly matched teams talent wise and capability wise. So I think it's a close game, but I do think it by the end it's NC State. We'll play NC State in the first round, and it doesn't matter a ton either way. I do think BYU comes out of this first round matchup. I don't see either of them as a dangerous potential upset team. Besides the fact that they get to play that first round game and they come in with a head of steam, and who knows, maybe they're comfortable, they're shooting the lights out, and that's why March Madness is always dangerous. But I like the matchup against either team. I think the bigger question is how we're going to come into the Gonzaga game.
And to that point, we've been talking about matchups. Like a 3 seed is going to be a good team, but they do seem like and that's the word on the street, is they're a little bit of a paper tiger. They're missing one of their top 2 players. And their best player, another big, like you were saying, similar style to Texas. Obviously, Gonzaga does not get us tested during the regular season. They got blown out by Michigan. In fact, I think it was that game when people really started taking Michigan seriously. But you look at these other 3 seeds, you got Michigan State, Illinois, UVA. I would take Gonzaga. And
any day.
We've handled Gonzaga in the tournament before, so
I know. I love that this is the WCC rivalry coming back, and there's these are teams that are familiar with each other, and that's a cool storyline. I don't like that it's in Portland. Gonzaga's got a home game in the tournament. That's a gift. And that's going to be tough. It really is. BYU struggled on the road. You're going to get a crowd that gets into it. BYU will have a good showing out there, but it'll be, I think, similar to like the Big 12 championship that was, down in Texas neck of the woods. You're going to see a 70-30, contingent for Gonzaga, and I think that's going to be tough. But as long as their other big guy doesn't play, Huff, I think it is. I like us against Gonzaga if you got the Big 12 tournament Cougars versus the end of season Cougars.
Well, let's get into that because obviously it's two very different teams from what we saw in that 3-game skid when we lost to all the teams we should have beaten on our schedule versus what we saw starting with Texas Tech and going into the tournament. And does it feel like this team has figured something out? Will they cool off and kind of regress, or is it something that's sustainable that they'll be able to carry with them to the tournament?
I mean, because this is crunch time, because it's win or go home, you got to feel like the team's going to lean into this because the issue that it seemed, I mean, when I watched the West Virginia game in person and then the blowout at Cincinnati, it was an effort question. It was an engagement question. Mentally, they were just defeated, right? They were still not over the Saunders injury. They were stumbling all over themselves to figure out how to play without him. And it came down to not a talent question or even an execution question, because when they bit the bullet and executed in those games, they could still score points. When they would move the ball, they were tough to stop, but they just didn't do it. They lagged, started playing hero ball. Nobody was moving on offense. And so to me, the energy level is so heightened because it's win or go home. I think you're going to get your best. I think BYU is going to give it their best, and I think their best is good enough to get them through the first couple rounds. I don't know that their best is good enough to get them through Purdue. We can talk about that later, but it feels like they can get through the Texas NC State matchup and Gonzaga if they bring their A game, and you got to believe their best is going to be on display in the tournament. I do think KY brings that out of the team in the biggest moments. I think he's done that as a coach in his young career so far, and I think he can do it again.
Yeah, I do think it's something that's sustainable that we should be able to see from the team. One, it does start with effort, like you just said, absolutely. But two, some of this was schematic. This was just a different approach from the coaching staff that they took with this team. And if they've, continue to have this defense that's a little more simplified, that allows the team to play free and kind of play to its strengths, and also getting more minutes to those guys who are just dogs out there, that are just the energy guys that are going to go out there and hustle and make plays. Now, are they perfect defensively? No, but these guys that are giving an effort and going to just basically take a lot of that load off of AJ, at least on the defensive end. So that way he's not tired at the end of the game, like we saw probably against Houston, where it seemed like things were just catching up with him, where he wasn't his usual self, where he could just create his own shot. He was just kind of standing there. If we get AJ like that, then we're probably in trouble. One of the big questions. So yes, the big question marks are, like you said, energy, but I think that will carry over. I think engagement will carry over. It'll be whether these guys are hot or cold from shooting. And these guys have been so streaky, and who's going to step up? Because if it's not one guy, usually it's somebody else, but it usually takes them a few shots before they've figured out who's going to be that hot hand for this game.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that's been both the blessing and the curse for this team, because you're going to get 30 from AJ. You are. The guy's clutch. He's unstoppable. And I think other teams at this point have just sort of said AJ's going to get his points. Like, I mean, they'll double him and they'll try and create chaos, but AJ's going to get his 30 points out there. Rob Wright has been reliable. He can be streaky from downtown and his ability to finish at the rim. But overall, you're going to get 18 to 20 from Rob at least. Where else is it coming from, right? Kennard Davis lights on fire and he goes 4 for 5. Great. Kostic, he's had games where he can light it up from downtown as well. But it feels like they start with Kostic. If he misses his first 2 to 3 shots, it's on to Boskovic. Then it's all right, Diamande, who's not going to shoot threes. Let's get some lockdown D and some lobs at the rim. they're just playing with the offense to see where they can cover. So to me, the success in the tournament rests more on the shoulders of Kostic and Kennard Davis and Boskovic and how they shoot, rather than AJ and Rob Wright, who are going to get their points.
Yeah, Bosco's been getting fewer minutes, I think, in this new version of this BYU team, and he hasn't
Yeah.
really been given much of a shot. And you're right. If Kostic is going to play, it is dependent on him being able to hit at least a shot somewhere early on, so they feel like, okay, he's going to be stroking it tonight. Let's
Because
get him out there.
he looks lost on defense at
Yep.
times.
Yep.
He does not execute fast break very effectively. Like, he just melts down to some odd situations, and he's young. I think he's got a super bright career, but I think to be effective, he's got to be shooting those threes, because if you put down 3 or 4 buckets from downtown, that's going to make up for a couple boneheaded plays. But I'll tell you,
When he's shooting lights out, yeah, absolutely, which he does. When he's hitting it, he's automatic. But when he's not, you cannot have him out there. And you'd much
no.
rather have a Diamande out there causing havoc for the other team, getting a few fast breaks. And even if he's not hitting threes, that's when it's like, okay, Rob, AJ, you go to work, and we've just got you covered here on defense. And I like that. I think that's when we're at our best. In fact, I don't know why. I love that Diamande is getting more minutes. I'm shocked that he's still only playing like 15 a game.
My favorite lineup is when you have Boop and Keita, Diamande, Wright, and Devonta.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you get a ton of points out of that, because it really is Devonta and Wright manufacturing offense at that point. Nobody else is going to shoot from deep. You can't spread the floor, but it is so long and athletic. It's so hard to score on that unit. You need Kennard Davis in there because he can slash. He's streaky on the 3-point shooting. He can finish at the rim way more effectively than Boop or Diamande. So, and he's great at defense as well. But there's something about the length and the intensity of those 5 that to me really make it exciting to watch.
Well, and think about it. Like, when you get a tip like that or a block that like Diamande and Keita are giving you, that just energizes the whole team, and they feel it as much as the crowd feels it. And I think everyone gets more engaged, and they're all just more invested in it. And so, yeah, I think the little bit of added offense that maybe a streaky shooter gives you does not compensate for the energy that they bring on defense. And then again, you got a couple guys, like if nobody else is hitting threes, you have a couple guys that can get points. So I'm with you. I like that lineup. Yeah, at least what'd you say, Boop, Keita, and Diamande, but even Moo Davis in there as one of those guys. Like, you got 4 guys you can kind of mix and match with, I guess, depending on matchups and getting rest and stuff. And then you just let the other 2 cook.
I do wish they would feed Keita a little bit more. It felt like early on in the season they gave him some looks in the post, and his post game was a little bit more polished than last year. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a new element, right? Obviously, he's getting his lobs, but they haven't played Decatur very much on offense throughout the latter half of the season, and they never feed it to him in the post. And I don't know, maybe to my untrained eye, maybe he was more effective or less effective than he seemed. But especially with that lineup where you got 2 dudes that can score, and everybody else, you're trying to sneak Diamande in for an alley oop, or a pick and roll with Keita to finish with a lob, something like that. It seems like feeding Kaba in the post would at least give you a different element, a different look, where it's a tough lineup to score with. And you saw Devonta and Wright struggle a little bit when you had those 5 on the floor.
Yeah. Wise Gamora says that Kate has missed a lot of dunks and layups. I'd be interested. I need to go look up and see what the stats are on that. I know he's had an injured hand, that he hasn't looked right all season. I think he's looked a little bit better. He does. I have seen him have a little bit of touch on his shots and hitting shots that I didn't want him taking, that, little, not floaters, but, instead of dunking it, just kind of putting it up there. And so maybe he's feeling better, but I like this too. Keita should be crashing boards, not posting up. Yeah,
That's fair.
Is strength, but sometimes there's been matchups where it's like, okay, he should be able to do something. Moments like this is where you miss a guy like Foose, like where it really gives you a change up.
I know. The changeup worked great.
Generate offense, and teams really had to be prepared for a couple different styles of play.
Yeah. Well, and it will be interesting to see how Keita matches up against these bigs because it's going to be Keita. We're going to see a lot more Ahmed. I know fans are split on Ahmed. A lot of people don't feel like he's effective out there, but the guy's 6'10" and he's a big body. He's going to be out there when you're facing Gonzaga and Purdue. We're going to be reliant on their defense, and Keita is such a gifted shot blocker, but he gets in the air so easily, and he gets into foul trouble. And if you get Keita into foul trouble, you got Ahmed who's coming in, you got Boop, and then who's going to defend a big in the post who's that polished and that good, like Purdue's guys or Gonzaga's big. Like they're so good and they're so talented in the post. I don't know that BYU has the defense between Keita and Ahmed to do that because both of those guys have to stay out of foul trouble to do that. And that's what worries me against, not so much against Gonzaga, but that's where Purdue feels like a brick wall. Is I don't know that we have the depth and the post guys to play any sort of defense, and those bigs are just going to feast on us all game.
Yeah, and that's when maybe you have to rely on Boscovich, and he's not your traditional like in the post kind of big, but he's a very big body and he's very long, and he showed that he's better at defense than I gave him credit for going into the season.
He's long and athletic, but you watch him against a really polished post player. They're so hard to defend to begin with. If you're not big like Ahmed or Keita, and with muscle mass or height or weight, something to where you can really control those guys in the paint, they just eat you up. They're so talented. I mean, to me, that back to the basket play is a lost art in basketball, and because of that, it makes it so much more dangerous. Again, that's why I think Foose was really good because he had that art. He was so technically sound with his back to the basket, and you don't have to defend that very often. Keita hasn't seen it very often, especially in the Big 12. You don't see a lot of that. Yeah. And so we're going to go against Gonzaga and Purdue, who are so proficient at it. That scares me because it's just I don't think Ahmed and Keita are going to be able to defend it because they're not accustomed to seeing it, especially to that level of expertise.
Yes. So let's talk about that because you're already talking. Let's talk about who we're going to see, and that. Is that me or you? Okay, I'm back.
I don't know. It was one of us.
Me.
You're back? Okay.
Okay. Anyway,
I'm getting warnings about
talk about
thunderstorm warnings out here. So
I've been hearing about tornadoes all day.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So you're already talking Purdue, but let's talk about this because this was something I noticed too that Jerem Jordan brought up was all the familiar faces. Obviously, Arizona, Villanova, who I don't know if you remember way back to when the season began. Utah State, yep. We haven't seen them this year, and honestly, I don't expect to see Utah State. They don't not happy with their draw, and I understand why. Miami, who BYU beat, and then Gonzaga, old foe, who we've already talked about. So kind of fun. Something else that I noticed because we're talking about this region and that I didn't bring up, but Arizona won their conference. Let's see, Purdue
won their conference.
And Arkansas
Gonzaga
won their conference. Gonzaga too. Well, I mean, I was just thinking of the power conferences in here, but yeah,
that's true. That's true.
So, I mean, it's not like, I mean, a lot of people are really happy with the West, and I do think we have a good draw, but that is a real threat there.
It's the bracket of champions. Hopefully, everybody's gassed from their conference tournaments. They just put 3 games in 3 days, and now they can't recover for March Madness. I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
So let's look at this. So BYU, let's just talk through this. So we think Gonzaga is probably good enough to beat Kennesaw State. Again, another conference champion, I believe. I can't believe they'd make it in if they weren't.
No, they're another conference champion.
Yeah, I'm sure. I doubt that's a 2-bid league right there. So let's say Gonzaga. I think that's a fair assumption at this point if BYU is able to win, which I think as we've just shown, we like what BYU has. You have AJ DeBonsa. You have a recipe. You have kind of this formula that's been working, and now you've had a few games to try it out, get some reps. Now you're getting some rest. I like what BYU coming into this tournament. Again, we've also seen that this team is very flawed. So nothing here is a given. Like BYU is going to have to play really well to get past these teams. But let's just say, since we're talking BYU, they win. they go on to face Gonzaga. And oh man, why is Gamora? Sorry, I missed it. You're blowing up here in the comments. No, Ahmed, please. So
get used to it. We got bigs to defend.
And then offenses are afraid of Keita, whether inside or out at the perimeter. Keita alters shots or blocks them. To my point with Keita is, he is athletic and he can help stay in front of guys. But the thing is, even when they blow by him, he's almost more dangerous because then you have the rundown block from behind. And
I love the way they use him to stop the on perimeter defense in the last few games.
Yep.
He switches to those guards and prevents a 3-point shot, and they can't get around him. He's so athletic.
Yes. I'm going to miss Keita so much. All right. Offensive strategy. AJ drives, Keita and Boop crash boards, Rob, Moo, do everything to get open for AJ, kick out if needed, rinse, repeat. And that's the thing we don't talk about enough is that Rob is a great 3-point shooter. He's been one of our more reliables. He just hasn't done it in high clip, but that's usually because he's got the ball in his hand and he's, driving and he's the one kicking. So
I would like to see AJ as the ball handler a little bit, not necessarily to bring it up, right? Yeah, Rob can bring it up, set a screen, but let AJ touch it and at least try and orchestrate some offense every time down the court. That's what drove me nuts at the end of the Houston game is AJ's off in the corner and he's barely touching the ball. And I'm just thinking, run some deliberate plays for him, run a double screen, run something that frees him up for just a minute to get the ball and just see what he can do. It felt like we had no offense the last 7 minutes, and the best player in college basketball isn't touching the ball.
Well, and even if your play is to, hey, ultimately this one's for Rob or whatever, or he just needs a break. But if he even touches the ball on the other side, people are going to make switches. People are going to start going. Like he has that gravity.
He draws the double team, frees up other guys. Yeah.
And maybe getting those two guys, even if he passes it to like Rob and Rob drives in, like that's going to give him that much more space. And then even if he ends up kicking it out, again, it's just more space because then people are going to have to shift and compensate.
It's what starts that rotation, and with good ball movement, you can open it up. So let's say AJ's exhausted at the end of the Houston game. Give him the ball and let him draw in the defense to start something. That was driving me nuts that we went 3 minutes without scoring. Okay, now we're 5 minutes without scoring. All right, get the ball in his hands. And it just felt like the last 7 minutes of the game, he didn't really get to touch it much.
Yeah, that was wild to me. All right. So again, let's say BYU wins. They're facing Gonzaga. Now, at this point, I think Purdue is a safe bet there at 2. This could be a toss-up.
It could be. I don't know much about Mizzou. I know more about almost every other team in the West bracket, but I don't know much about Mizzou.
I don't either. Let's just say Miami. Like, do either Mizzou or Miami, you think, have a chance to get by Purdue? I know Purdue's a 2 seed. I know they just won the Big Ten, but they've also been talked about as a relatively flawed team in some regards. And so
I think Purdue's a little overranked. They're really good and they terrify me, but I do think they're a little overranked as a 2 seed. Even as a conference champion. I know our Big Ten friends out there would blow a gasket that their conference champion is a little overranked at a 2 seed. But look at the losses that Purdue has had this year. They've had some stretches where they've struggled. And so I agree. I think they're a flawed team. They're probably a 3 seed, a really strong 3 seed, as opposed to, Gonzaga, who I don't think is quite as strong as a 3 seed.
Yeah. So let's say BYU gets past Gonzaga. We've talked about Gonzaga, a little bit of a paper tiger. You know what? They won majority of those conference games against us in conference tournaments. Well, guess what? I would take March Madness win over any of those any day, except for when we beat them on their what would have been an undefeated season. That was very satisfying. But
that was pretty cool.
That was very cool. So I mean, even if a Miami makes it through, you like to think, okay, well, we beat them once. You like to think we'd be able to do it again.
Yeah.
They're going to have revenge on their mind. If Mizzou makes it through, again, they're a 10 seed. BYU is a 6 seed. That's not a crazy difference. I don't know enough about Mizzou, but I like to think BYU is going to at least, especially with AJ DeBunsup, they're going to have, in any game they're in, they're going to have the best player on the floor with AJ. So I like that. But let's say it is Purdue going through, and BYU's got to now face the 2 seed in the bracket. You think they're a little overrated as a 2 seed?
It's hard to see
us to win here. Like at this point, Like, is this about the limit? I mean, we'd be at the Sweet 16. Is that enough for you for this team? Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Is it
I mean,
enough for BYU to make the Sweet 16 after all the hype that we had in the offseason?
I'm okay with that. Given the 5, 6 season-ending injuries, whatever we've had, one to Richie Saunders, I'm okay with the Sweet 16. You know, Eh, that's great. We've had a great season with AJ. He's been fun to watch. He'll be fun to watch in the NBA. Um, it's great, man. I'm a very grateful BYU fan. I remember what it was like getting beat up in the WCC the year before we started the Big 12. I still have that fresh on my mind. I'm grateful for a Sweet 16 game. We've already got some great recruits coming in next year. We get some guys back from injury. It'll be a fun year. Um, I I'm okay with that. I know it will feel like a letdown that we don't get at least an Elite Eight and match our best ever, and that we don't cut down the nets and we get rid of this stupid tag of the most NCAA tournament appearances without a Final Four and whatever. Um, I hope we go further than this, but I'm okay with this. I am.
Yeah. Wise Gamora says Sweet 16 would be a success given injuries. Yeah, I still feel like anything less would be a letdown because you do have AJ DeBonsa, because our expectations were so high. But again, it's not going to be an easy path. You're going up against either way, a power four, I guess five in basketball team in that first round, and then a team like Gonzaga, who is a perennial, winner. So,
Yeah.
um, and then you got Purdue is your consolation prize if you make it that far. Do you think BYU stands a chance to get past Purdue, even playing like they did against Texas Tech or
Yeah,
North
yeah, no,
Carolina?
I do, and like we talked about, but Purdue has been up and down at times, and so I think this is a game that requires BYU shooting the lights out. Right, this requires a special performance, not just 45 points from AJ or something like that. The team has to come together and shoot at a super high clip from three. They've got to get Purdue's bigs into foul trouble early and sway the game, control the game that way. There's some things that have to go BYU's way to be able to win that game. Honestly, I'm more scared of Purdue than I am Arizona. BYU's played Arizona tight, even without Richie Saunders. So I'm more scared of Purdue, even though I think Arizona's the better team. We've matched up better against Arizona. I don't like the matchup against Purdue. I don't think we have the bigs and the depth in our front court to win that game. And so I think things have to bend our way, either through the foul trouble on Purdue's bigs or us just shooting the lights out and winning. Scoring 100 points on a team that likes to slow it down. Something like that has to happen for us to win that game.
So you're rooting for Queens here against Purdue, then.
Absolutely.
Well, so let's talk about this because I mean, Arkansas, I think, can have a good chance. Wisconsin, I don't know if we want to see them again because they're going to remember that game. But
Ah,
I do feel good. Look, we've talked about these one seeds. I think Arizona really is most likely to make it at least to the Elite Eight. So let's say BYU makes it that far. They somehow find the recipe to get past Purdue or whoever makes it to that point. You just talked about this. You talked about the BYU's matchup with Arizona. We played them tight. I mean, we had to come back from behind and ultimately played them tight twice. It's also hard to beat a team three times in one season. Obviously, this would be that third matchup. Um, I like to
yeah.
think that BYU could get it done the third time. I think it will be tough. Arizona is a very good team, but again, whenever you have AJ and in these moments, I like this is where we're really going to see like does AJ have that next level? And he's shown a little bit of it so far. We saw him really elevate his game in the Big 12 tournament. Does he have another level? Can he keep it going in March Madness?
It, to me, the answer is going to be yes. I mean, I'm a complete believer in DeBonta. I think he's got the it factor, and so I think he's going to play great. It's just to beat Purdue and to beat Arizona, it's going to take more than the 45 points from AJ. And I think AJ is going to put together a masterpiece in every game he plays in the NCAA tournament. Um, but oddly, and I'll say I'm not optimistic about Purdue or Arizona. I am more optimistic about Arizona beating Arizona than Purdue, just because we played them tough both times. We know them so well. And like you say, it's tough to beat the same team three times, especially when it's been close games. Eventually, the ball doesn't roll your way. And so it feels like if we could get over that hump and get to the Elite Eight, if it feels like okay, if BYU is playing that well to get past Purdue, playing that style of basketball, boy, I'm a believer in BYU at that point. I like a shot against Arizona. I see that almost as a 50-50 shot.
Yeah. Okay. And then the question is, so if we get this miracle run and go to the Final Four, how do you like BYU's chances against any of, these likely teams from this bracket? You've got Michigan, you've got Iowa State. And I mean, we've beaten Iowa State. I mean,
I know. So that's
you
the
got
thing. I like
UVA
Iowa State.
potentially.
I like Iowa State more than I like Michigan. I think Virginia has a chance to come out of this bracket. Um,
Do you want to
like
see
I
Bama
said,
again? No.
I don't know. I don't want to see Bam again. But I don't know if you saw the news, but they lost one of their leading scorers today.
I did see that.
I had to change my bracket after that because I had Bama upsetting Michigan, and after that I thought, nah, that's a little too optimistic. Now they're not going to do it. I think Tech might handle Bama. We'll see, but um,
Wish they had Toppin.
I know if they had Toppin, man, I'd like Tech to push for the Final Four. I'd say they'd beat out Michigan for the Final Four, but we'll see. This is where the draw to me is favorable. If BYU in this alternate universe we're talking about, where BYU is playing out of their minds and makes it to the Final Four, I think this bracket right here that we're looking at with Michigan and Iowa State is the weakest bracket. I really do. I think Virginia's good. I think you have a lot of very, very, very good teams. I don't know that you have any elite teams. I don't see this bracket going to the national title game. I don't. I think you got Duke, that's leading the other bracket. You got Michigan State in there that could be really good. Um, you've got some other brackets that are really strong. I don't feel like this side is as strong, and I could be totally wrong about Michigan. And I know that's just sort of the buzz around Michigan right now is that they're kind of slowing down, they're stumbling a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know that they have it in them to really make it to the title game.
All I just heard you say is that BYU is going to the championship game.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, that's basically
I'm
what you said.
picking BYU to win it all. I'm ready to wager money on it.
Hey, speaking of BYU winning it all, I love this. From Puka Nakua. Have you seen his bracket? He's got
I have
BYU
not.
all the way. Oh, that is small on here. But he's got BYU going all the way. You gotta love it.
That's
So,
awesome.
love that the representation there. But yeah, you're right. What I'd like to see, I mean, there's some interesting matchups here. Me having lived in both Virginia and Michigan, that'd be kind of fun. But also think about it. Does Iowa State want to see Dallin Hall? Probably not. What
No,
about
no, they
what
don't.
about Kentucky? Dallin Hall. You get Pope and
I would love it. So I really want to see Iowa State come out. My Final Four has 3 Big 12 teams, and that is me totally manifesting. I want Big 12 to
yeah.
reassert their dominance this year. But I'd love Kentucky. I mean, we talked about that. I love Mark Pope. He needs some redemption this year. That fan base is ready to have his head on a picket because heaven forbid, loses 11 games and
Yeah, if he gets an early exit, I think I might actually have. I can't remember. I debated. I think I actually picked Santa Clara to upset them in the first round. So
they could, man. They've had some weird meltdowns. I don't think Mark Pope would be gone next year, but he'd be on a hot seat for sure.
oh yeah,
And there'd be a ton of pressure on him because, to the fans' point, there's a ton of money in that program right now, and they're a 7th seed, and that's not. There's a ton of money in the BYU program right now. We're hitting heights we've never hit before, whereas Kentucky's expecting a national title with that money. So. Um, he's gonna have to pick it up here in the next couple years. But Colin Chandler's playing great, man. He's had some big moments this year. I love that for him, and would love to see Kentucky pull some upsets and make a deeper run.
yeah. I have mixed feelings about Pope, but also just the fact that it's Kentucky, blue blood, SEC. I don't know. I don't wish him ill will, but also there's other things that come into play. Tech, again, I just don't think this is their year. I think the top and injury is probably going to keep them short. Otherwise, like you said, before that, Tech was going to be dangerous. They'd probably be a higher seed too.
Yeah.
Iowa State, they'd have a real shot of coming out of this bracket.
I like Iowa State coming out of that bracket. One of the announcers was commenting on the Big 12 tournament that Iowa State in the big dance is more dangerous than the Big 12 tournament because people aren't used to their style of play. They run a complex, unique defense that is tough to adapt to. And you can look at it on film as different facing it in person. By the time you get to the Big 12 tournament, everybody's played them a bunch.
mm-hmm.
And you deploy that against teams that have never seen it all year long, it's really difficult to score on. And good defense goes deep in the NCAA tournament. So I like Iowa State to come out of this side of the bracket. I really do.
Let's talk about other Big 12 teams just real quick. So Houston, they're the lone team with 8. You'd think that they would be split up, 2 teams
Appropriately.
region, but they aren't because there's other things that come into play. But Houston, I think they're the lone. Am I right in that? Yeah, I think they're the lone
Yeah.
Big 12 team here in this region. And what's interesting about it is, I would say Florida might be the most, not flawed, but maybe most susceptible to getting upset.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, if you think about it, Houston, they're 5 on most rankings, right? So if they're kind of that next team, they really do have a chance to come out of it. I do like Houston. I think that the defense and the experience could help them get there, and they can redeem themselves. And then over here in this region, I mean, TCU, I hate Ohio State, so I hope they come out. Obviously, that is a very tough draw early on. I don't care how hot TCU is. Hopefully, they give them a fight.
They're not that hot.
No, so I don't think we have to worry about a Kansas TCU here
Yeah.
in the next round. But also, Kansas is a team that I know they have Darren Peterson. I know they're very good. They have a great coach. They have great history. All that. They just seem like a flawed team that could be looking at an early exit.
Well,
which you could say the same about BYU, and we've been honest about that through all this. But that's just my read on Kansas.
No, I totally agree. And they're playing a really angry St. John's team in the second round. St. John's is livid about their draw. And I don't know if they necessarily have the right to be. St. John's had some rough times this year. But
the Big East has been kind of down this year.
Yeah. So I'm okay with St. John's draw, but what I'm saying is you got a really motivated St. John's team, and it feels like the issue with Kansas this year has been motivation, a la their leader in Darren Peterson. Does he want to be on the court or not? And I'm not saying that attitude is perpetuated amongst all Kansas players, but it just feels like they had some really head scratching letdowns, and they never had that dominant performance where you feel like if they had another level, they would have hit there in the Big 12 tournament in that game against Houston. And it just hasn't been there. So I think they lose to St. John's in that second round.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for anyone to imagine anyone against Duke right now, but let's say St. John's comes. I have mixed feelings because, like, I could see St. John's going either way. I could see them Big East was a little bit down this year. Maybe they're not all they're cracked up to be, and they could be bounced a little bit earlier than they think. Or I could see them coming in and playing lights on fire or pants on fire, and just like going crazy and knocking Duke out. Like, I could see either scenario at this point.
I know Duke's number 1 overall seed and ACC champion, and they are the hottest hand. They did lose their starting point guard and to a foot fracture. So not coming back, but apparently that wasn't enough to keep him from winning the SEC championship. So it feels like Duke's inevitably going to the Final Four this year. I don't really see anybody, unless, like you say, St. John's comes out on fire and shoots the lights out and beats them unexpectedly. That could happen to anybody. But it feels like Duke should probably come out of this bracket. Michigan State is probably, it's Tom Izzo in March, and that's always terrifying to face him in March. So he's one that could knock him out in the Elite Eight, maybe.
Potentially. So I guess what we're saying is we don't really have to worry about Big 12 teams knocking each other out that early on. The other one is UCF. You could see them coming in again, another Big East team. That's another thing. St. John's and UConn in the same region is interesting, but
yeah, that is tough for the Big East.
Yeah, it may not get to that point. Yeah, where they're probably their 2 best teams. I'm trying to think who else.
Yeah, 2 best teams for sure. I mean, Villanova's out there. They're not going to vie for the being the best. This is
a tough draw for UCF. They were looking pretty hot for a while. Again, they're a team that could upset you, and they could be kind of a feisty.
They could. I think UCF is just. I'm not saying any team's just happy to be there. UCF barely made it into the tournament. They should be happy that they came off the bubble and made it.
Even if they get past UCLA, who had a hot tournament, and then are able to take on UConn, I mean, that would be amazing right there. I don't see them being able to get past then a Michigan State too, where they would have to be lucky as if like a Louisville or a South Florida come in. It's one of those, like you said, you get a little bit of help, and now all of a sudden you got a 10 draw. Ooh, that's
you need a little chaos on that side of the bracket.
That would actually be really fun. If you get some chaos, because I just think this path would be too tough for them. So I really don't foresee any of these Big 12 teams playing each other. I really hope in our region, for sure, we see a Big 12 matchup.
Yeah.
And then down here, I mean, I would love it if somehow Tech broke through and made it. But so even though I know some people are like three Big 12 teams in one region, I don't think we're going to have to worry about it. I don't think it's as bad as it kind of sounds.
No,
So
I think it's fine. I do. I don't. I mean, you're not going to spread it out and get 4 Big 12 teams in the Final Four, and that's fine. I think there's a legitimate chance to get 3 Big 12 teams in the Final Four. I
yeah,
I picked that on my bracket, not just being optimistic, but I think there's some legitimacy to that. I think Arizona is probably, arguably, the best remaining team. I know Duke's the number one overall seed, but with that injury, it could be. I've got Arizona and Duke in the championship. I have Arizona winning it all. I think they've been the most consistent all year long. They haven't been quite as good as they were at the middle of the season, but I think they've got another gear here, and I think they'll have just enough to beat Duke in the championship.
hey, I hope you're right. I just think it just rarely works out that way. Like when you have 3 of the top 6 teams in college basketball, like you have a good shot of getting 3 teams into the Final Four. But again, there's always chaos. It rarely ever works out
Yeah.
exactly like that. But there's ever going to be a year for the Big 12. It really feels like this is it, especially.
It I agree, and it just, to me, it's not so much about Arizona. I think they are. I think it's important they're as good as they are because I think the West bracket is tough. It's the weakness of Iowa State's and Houston brackets, where I think those are the most beatable 1 seeds, Michigan and Florida, as opposed to Arizona and Duke, who I think are really, really tough. And you get styles of play that are unique. Houston, they've been there before, right? Relying on a lot of experience there. Iowa State, I think, has that really weak bracket they're going up against. I think it's a very Big 12 friendly draw, and that's why I think you could see 2 or 3 Big 12 teams in the Final Four.
Yeah, I would love it. So you say you have Arizona winning it all. How far do you actually have BYU going on your
I
bracket?
have them losing to Purdue. I do, much to the dismay of my 8-year-old who saw my bracket and felt like I had personally injured him after he had crowned the Cougars the national champions. Um, I just realistically, and I'll draw up another bracket for him where BYU wins it all because I do it every year. But I couldn't live with myself. I didn't have a bracket with BYU winning it all. If it was the year they actually went to the Final Four. But I think the matchup is too tough in against Purdue stylistically. They don't have one, but they have 2 very good, effective bigs. And who are you going to start? Kaba and Boop, Kaba and Ahmed together, twin towers, try and count. I don't know. Like, I just don't know how you're going to stop it. I hope they can. I hope they get their bigs into foul trouble. I hope we start shooting the lights out and you're trading 2s for 3s and you start to build a lead. There's a lot of scenarios where BYU could come out and be effective in that game, but I don't know. That was always my fear when I looked at our lineup preseason and I looked at our roster. This was before we had Ahmed. Is actually, oddly enough, I was thinking of Purdue. They had last year the one of the best players in the country. There was 7-2, 7-3, just dominating people in the NCAA tournament. And what if we run up against that? Well, that's who we have in the tournament, and I worry about our ability to defend the post effectively enough to win that game.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely have quite a route to get there. Let's see. Wise Gamora says BYU can get to the Final Four if they bring psycho defense for 40 minutes, risk fouling out a few guys every game in favor of smothering the other team all game. It's true. I mean, that's when they've been at their best, when they've been able to get their defense going. And the nice thing about it is you're not playing 3 games in 3 days. You're playing 2 games in
Yep.
3 days. And so you should be on fresher legs. You can go because you know you won't have to play for another week, especially on that second game. Like, hey, we're not reserved, we don't have to preserve anything. We're not playing again for almost a week. And so I do like that you have to bring that intensity, and it's got to be everybody. I mean, AJ's a great help on defense because of his length, but obviously he's got to rest at some point because you need all that offense going through him. So I expect him to be resting very little in these games, and everybody else has to bring it. They have to be ready to do their part. And that's where I'm not so confident about anybody else doing enough to support the team. And that's why when you have Richie, did he have his defensive deficiencies? Sure. Did the big three always jive perfectly in offense? No, but it was one more guy you just had all the confidence in the world, and you knew he was going to hustle. Having said that, Richie brings energy, even on the bench. Like, what was their record? What are they, 4-1 with him on the bench since?
Yeah, I think so.
And that one loss was to Houston there. And so I think this team plays a different style. He's there hyping up the team. I imagine he'll be there with them in Portland and throughout the tournament. Yeah, I really like BYU to make the Sweet 16. And if they do, I mean, it feels like the floor of what's kind of acceptable. Anything less is going to be a very hard out for Cougar fans. But if things go just right, I do think BYU has a chance to go a little bit deeper. Just like they had a chance to go deeper last year, and they just got a bad draw. Like Alabama was a terrible matchup, and they got super hot. In fact, they used up all their shots against BYU and had nothing left. But and so that's just some of the luck of the draw. And like you said, you need that chaos to help you out. And if chaos strikes, I think BYU does have enough, especially with AJ, to do it. Do I think it'll happen? The odds aren't favorable, but I'm holding out hope.
At some point, BYU breaks through and makes the Final Four. I know we get that statistic of nobody's made more tournaments than us without making the Final Four. That's because at some point, it all lines up. The chaos ends up in your favor. That March Madness is chaos, and eventually the dominoes fall, and that team that matches up perfectly against you, that would have run you over, gets upset in the first round, and there's a 15 seed beats a 2 seed Purdue, and all of a sudden things line up for BYU. It's going to happen. We're going to keep making the tournament, and eventually the chaos is going to line up. And you want to one day to just be dominant enough where you don't have to depend on the chaos. And it felt like we were going to be that team when we started the year, but it wasn't. It wasn't. So now you have to rely on the chaos with it that makes it so that those 11 seeds and the 10 seeds have made the Final Four in the past. BYU doesn't need that drastic, right? I think they can get through their first couple rounds, but you're going to need some chaos. I'm not saying Purdue has to lose, but chaos in that game to create the upset. And yeah, I mean, at some point, BYU is going to be the team that shoots the lights out because you're just on point. You can only go to so many tournaments before things finally line up for you, and so in one view of statistics, every year that becomes more likely that happens to us. So let's be optimistic.
Yeah, let's do it. It may happen. It could be this year. Again, having AJ on the team really sets your it gives you a level, kind of an anchor within there of the realm of possibility. Like, you're only going to think, I don't know, that's a bad analogy because now I'm talking.
You got a higher floor.
But your floor is higher. Like, you might still lose, but your ability to be in any game is higher with AJ because he's a constant, right? You talk about the variability. AJ's a constant. Like you said, he's going to get his 30 points. The only variable is he going to go for 40? Like he's going to get his score. The variable is everybody else on the team.
Correct.
So that's how high the ceiling can go, is what everyone else is going to bring. Whereas I think the Mark Pope teams, like your ceiling and your floor, there was a wider variance because it was all dependent on streaky 3-point shooting. So yeah, you could potentially have been a team like Alabama against BYU versus, getting bounced in the first round like we've seen. So this is my favorite comment all night is put Richie in, even in a wheelchair. Dude, one leg, whatever it takes. He's got a boot on. Put him out there. He doesn't have to run fast. I think he would change the mentality of the game. And the other team would look.
Bottom up in the corner.
I seriously throw them out there for a possession or two, and kind of like you do with the zone, where you just mix up team, and they're just kind of confused. They don't
play the box and one, where the one is on the other side of the court, waiting for the ball to be thrown.
So you just play 4-man on defense. You put all your defenders out there, AJ, and then you have Richie on the other side. I wonder what his 3-point shot is like with on one leg. But
it'd go in.
It'd go in. So
60%.
So I like it. I mean, at some point, it might be worth a shot. Like, if you find yourself in a pinch in one of these games, it's all or nothing. Tell him to suit up.
One shot.
Come suit up. Have him suit up and sit on the bench and be ready. Have him stretch. Have him warm up, whatever he needs to, so that when the moment comes.
I've had ACL surgery. He can't run. He can shoot off 2 legs right now.
Okay.
He can. I've had 2 ACL surgeries. I know how this goes. He can shoot. He can't run. He can shoot. He can't pivot. He can't cut. He can shoot.
The only problem is he has quite a big payday riding on his ACLs healing.
That's true. That's true.
I don't think your salary is dependent on that in the same way. But and also BYU got all its bad luck out of the way early, if luck works that way, in terms of injuries and some
There
of
you
these
go. All
games,
the more reason why statistics favor this team.
all the close games. Here's the thing. I know that this coaching staff relies on statistics. They keep thinking, they can't keep hitting these threes. We'll let them. But guess what? Sometimes it doesn't always come back down to earth in the game that you're playing. I keep thinking think that, eventually he'll start missing shots. Yes, but it's not necessarily tonight. It might be the next night.
The next night.
Right. But and same with our guys. It's like keep shooting. And except Moo Davis is kind of the exception to that. Like he does need to keep shooting, and then once he sees one go in, then he'll be hot. Whereas Kostic is kind of, it feels like all or nothing.
It is. You know how Kostic is going to go that night by the first 3 shots, and I think that's been a strategy for BYU is to put him in, start him, get him 3 shots in the first 5 minutes, and then is he going to play 20 minutes and he's going to hit, he's going to score 15, or you pull him and he's done for the night.
Yeah. So I want to look at a couple other things. I think everybody, at least I assume most people have heard of the trapezoid of excellence here at this point. And where is this? Okay. So if we look at this graphic, looking at these matrix talking, and this is what's his name again? Yeah. Ryan Hammer. How he says, like, this is really where you want to live. Now, last year, BYU was up in this area, not there, but not so far off. But, you look at company that we're with and some of these other teams, good teams, but not necessarily championship caliber teams. But I do think that's good enough for teams to make a run. But we talk about Big 12 teams potentially making the Final Four. Now, I don't think Gonzaga, again, you think about who they're playing throughout the season, this might not mean as much. Houston, they're up here. They're also not far. So, again, we're looking at these Big 12 teams that have, I think, a real shot. But I think BYU's hanging in there, that they have that potential if you put stock in these metrics.
The difference for BYU is they've played within that trapezoid some games, and they've played far below it other games.
Yeah.
And so when BYU's on point, and you can say that for a lot of these teams on here, March Madness is about how streaky you are at the right time, hitting your groove at the right time.
Yeah.
And BYU showed flashes of that in the Big 12 tournament. They could be a Cinderella run. They could be a second round bounce. You just don't know because there's very few teams. The ones obviously that are sitting up there right now are the ones that have been up there all season and have showed it game in and game out. And BYU hasn't done that, but they've got the potential to do it.
Hey, we got a comment here from is this JL Python? Are we rooting for all LDS affiliated teams? He clarifies here in the next. Oh, so you mean based on players? So you got Hawaii, Clemson. Who's Michigan State? I wasn't aware.
Actually, we got to do our research.
Yeah, I got to do better research.
The other ones I'm clued in on.
I know. Was it Ice Moa went to Michigan State, but wrong sport. So
yeah.
Let's see. I generally do. Like, I want to see you guys do well. I think at TCU as well with Tanner Toolson and.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun to see guys come off their missions or represent the church in other ways and out there playing. It's fun. So I typically do, at least when I find out about those guys, there's that affiliation and you're rooting for them. That's how I feel about Kentucky. I know that when we matched up against Clemson, there was a lot of there's a lot of connections there.
So not everyone's as high on Pope as you are.
No, they're not. I love Pope, man. I think he's awesome, and I know it's tough when we parted ways. We've talked to death about that, but man, I love Pope.
I have mixed feelings. I see both sides of it. So let's see. What a heartbreaker for UVA.
Oh.
You felt like they had a real shot to be in there. That would have been really cool.
Well, and the way they lost too.
Yeah, I forgot actually.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's March Madness for you. I love that
it is.
I love when it starts in the conference tournaments. Like,
yeah,
that's what it's all about, and it does suck. It would have been really cool for them, and we've had. I think there's been other years where we've had a few. I don't know if Utah's ever had more than 4 teams in because we've had BYU.
Well, Weber State's had some runs there. I mean, they had some great.
Was Utah
great
in
teams.
the tournament those years too? Because I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I'm sure there's been years with 4 teams from Utah, but
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I generally do. I've got no ill will. Now, if it had been like, I don't know. I don't know. Actually, Colin Chandler, a little bit where they blow off BYU, but he was always a Mark Pope guy, so I don't,
he was, and it's interesting because he committed to Mark Pope immediately. He didn't wait to see, BYU build their team from last year, and you just wonder if he had just taken a half step back and saw what BYU did in the post Mark Pope era, if he would have, if he would have invested a little bit in KY. And but I'll tell you, I don't know that Colin Chandler would have had the minutes on BYU last year, or maybe even this year with the injuries certainly that he's had with Kentucky. BYU has had some stacked teams that rival the talent that Kentucky's had. So I don't know that he would have had more playing time or a faster playing time at BYU with the teams we put together since he's been back off his mission. And it just feels like it was a better fit for Pope. That's why it's easier not to have ill will towards Colin Chandler when he first left. It's like, oh man, and we're losing Colin Chandler, and then everything happened with KY, and we put together these last 2 teams, and it's like, oh, that's great. It worked out for both of us.
And we can always talk about potential of the off season. I don't want to get into that yet because BYU still has 6 games to play ahead of them.
And some nets to cut down.
Yeah, lots of nets to cut down. No, but at least one more game. So I'm focused on the tournament right now. We will get to that postseason. So be sure to like, subscribe, so you can come back for all of that. But let's see, it's Jackson Kohler for Michigan State.
Wow, I did not even know. I got to do my homework.
I was going to say, with the name spelled like that, he's got to be. But we also had a Jackson who was not LDS on the team that was spelled. I don't think, was it just Jaxon? Anyway, I kind of like Sparty anyway. I grew up in Michigan, so I usually root for Michigan teams as well. Except now,
Tom Izzo's awesome, man. I like Tom Izzo.
I just don't like the Big Ten anymore, so I can't
Yeah.
Confused. So, but yeah, Izzo's great, and he's got great teams. So. Best of luck to him. But I want to hang on to this point right here from Wise Gamora. It says, look at Alabama's pace. That's what BYU needs to do. And it's true. I mean, we were talking about that. Like, I don't know if we want to be all the way out here.
No.
Especially because AJ thrives kind of in that mid-range where he's posting up and he's filling out the defense. But when you get our whole team into it, we're pushing. And so, yeah, you'd like to see us move that pace maybe a little bit more.
A little bit. I do not want to see us be Alabama. There's a reason why Alabama is not going to win the title this year, and they didn't win the title last year. And that pace, you don't see teams win the title at that pace. It is hair on fire, disorganized basketball. You have to be able to calm down a little bit. I agree with Wise Gamora in the sense that it's much more fun to watch a fast-paced basketball game. And I think BYU does a little bit better when they pick up the pace, to your point. But that Alabama Georgia level of basketball is so fast paced. They don't win championships that way. They don't. And I think that's why you see that trapezoid of excellence cuts off to a certain degree, right? It kind of comes down a little bit where you have to be in that middle range of pace where you're not too out of control fast and you're not too slow it down, try and grind it out. You have to find a balance there a little bit. And BYU is certainly on the faster pace side. I don't mind if they go a little faster because it's fun to watch, but I don't see the Georgias and the Alabamas winning a lot of titles because it's too fast. It's too uncontrolled.
Well, the other thing is we don't have the 3-point shooters to do that. I mean, BYU was a more fast paced when we had Mark Pope, right? But we were so hot and cold. Whereas here we're just generally cold. So, and have one guy maybe warm up a little bit, get a little bit room temperature. But so I just don't think it's in BYU's DNA. But I do want to see us focus on the defensive side so then we can get out in those fast breaks. And that's where hopefully this picks up a little bit and not just get so stagnant.
With the intensity, it naturally moves faster.
Where's St. Mary's in the diagram? That is a good question. He could have missed some, or it could be buried. Oh, St. Mary's is right here. They're right at that corner. With Sparty and UConn and Illinois. I mean, that's
they all play slower.
Company. But again, you look at them playing in all these other teams are coming from one of the Power 5, except for like Utah State or something. But and then you got the WCC. I mean, that is typical of these teams that just beat up on lesser competition all season. I mean, we saw BYU, although BYU generally had like one surprise loss in that conference every year. But that's neither here nor there. It was lesser competition. So I I don't know. That would be interesting. I'm glad we're not going to see St. Mary's though in this tournament. I think Gonzaga would be more fun. But there's another one that's kind of like this. And what does he call it? He calls it the very important graph, TM. But this one is looking at adjusted offensive rating versus team rebounds.
Turnovers forced. Opponent rebounds and turnovers forced.
It has a V. It'd just be turnover, maybe to distinguish from timeouts, I guess.
Yeah.
Opponent rebounds, and then and turnovers forced. Okay. Oh, it's minus opponents rebounds and turnovers forced. Okay. But anyway, this is another interesting one. I think it's interesting whenever you can find trends. And sure enough, I mean, you could pick almost any two metrics, and the same best teams are going to be there because they're highest in all the metrics.
Yeah.
So some of these are not as deep as they proclaim to be. But I think there is something to it, and so I think it's interesting to see. At least BYU's in the upper quadrant. Like BYU is hanging around there. Like we just make the cut in this case. But again, we're hanging around some of these other teams. Like I'd feel better being up with with the trends of these more upper echelon teams, but that's just not who BYU's been this year. We've had a lot of downs, and we've had a lot of highs, and then we've had a lot of almost really highs, and we've had some pretty down moments too. So I think BYU can do it. I think right now we talk about peaking at the right time. Last year was that West Virginia game. This year it seemed to be Texas Tech, I guess. So
you hope. We'll see how it goes.
See if they can ride it. But it's really interesting to think adjusted offensive rating. I mean, that's where BYU's been really good. Now, our opponents, that's the problem, is we've been so streaky. And so that's we're right in the middle. Like sometimes we've been really good and sometimes we've been bad. And fortunately, we come out just on top there. But so a lot of signs out there that BYU can get it done. But ultimately, you just got to hope that we get the same team we've just watched for the last few games. So man, I'm so excited. I love March. Like I know it's going to be gut wrenching whenever BYU loses, if they lose, because they might win it all. But nonetheless, I love March, all the moments, and love catching as much of it as possible. I should have led with this. Are you taking Thursday and Friday off?
I wish, but work still calls, responsibility and all that. But we got time set aside for the Cougars. We'll watch the Cougars, and I keep an eye on my bracket always, because that's what's fun, man. It's every game in those first couple rounds is so much fun.
I've started getting my kids involved with it. I just tell them, whoever wins gets to pick a treat. And so I'll take them for a treat. And so none of them care, and they're all into it. They're always running in, checking their bracket. They're checking the score. This is what it's all about, and
that's right.
Get into it a little bit. So just trying to give them a little bit of a taste of it, much to my wife's chagrin. But we're doing it, and to having some success there with the kids, getting them roped in. But I will be watching as much as I can. I will be skipping Thursday night basketball to watch BYU. Not going this year, but let's see, or this week. Let's see. Luckily, BYU's game is late, so I can watch it. It's late. I mean,
I'm happy about that. It's not midday. It's prime time.
It's not midday. Yeah, it's definitely, at least you're home. You're not at work, whatever. But
that's what AJ does for you. Gives you a prime time slot.
Yeah, got bedtime right in the middle. I don't know. I work remotely, so I guarantee you I'll have games on up in the corner on one of my screens here all day long. At least the close one. So. Perfect. Well, guys, thanks everyone for hopping in the chat, for watching, and please be sure to like the video and subscribe. We'll be on. Are you coming on after the game on Thursday?
I hope so. Thursday.
Not too late for you. So I'll be on after every game BYU plays in March Madness, unless things come up, but every game. And then we'll obviously come and do a wrap up on the season, look at the off seasons and several other things as we move on, but too soon to think about that yet. So thanks everybody for watching. And as always, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.